Well, we're in 1 Kings chapter 17. 1 Kings chapter 17. Throughout human history, men and women have lived in light of their boundaries and limitations. We oftentimes live near bodies of water because we realize we can only go a few days without drinking water. We can't see in the dark, so we figure out ways of harnessing light, and we figure out ways to play with fire and light bulbs, and we adapt and modify there. We live in light of our limits and boundaries. We can't communicate really more effectively than how far we can yell, so we have invented writing utensils. We have microphones to project speech, and we've even invented cell phones, trying to surpass what we can physically do. Boundaries and limitations, whether we think about it or not, have impacted us. Now, these limitations, or living in light of these boundaries, they also impact how we view God and how we connect with Him. And oftentimes, these limitations and how we connect and communicate, we also bring into other areas of our life. And many years ago, the nation of Israel had been captured by an idolatrous system that attempted to get rid of their limitless God with a belief that there were many kinds of gods, and these little gods could be appeased and motivated and, goaded into doing stuff that they liked. They wanted to do away with the God of Israel, no matter what He did for them, and follow these other gods. It was really a self-serving system, as in create gods that give you what you want. These gods oftentimes very much resembled the nature of man. Now, these gods, as we're going to see today, had huge limitations. Besides the fact that they were completely imaginary, these gods and this system of belief had rules. They had things that one God could do and another God couldn't. And these gods were unable to keep up with the limitless power of the extraordinary God. And so we're here in 1 Kings chapter 17. I'll be reading a chunk of verses, and then we'll talk about it, and then we'll keep going. But here in 1 Kings chapter 17, it says, "Now Elijah the Tishbite of Tishbe in Gilead said to Ahab, as the Lord God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there shall be neither dew nor rain these years except by my word. And the word of the Lord came to him, depart from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. You shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there. So he went and did according to the word of the Lord. And he went and lived by the brook Cherith, that is east of the Jordan. And the ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. And after a while, the brook dried up, because there was no rain in the land." The first thing we see about this limitless God is not limited by the laws of nature. See, the nation of Israel, as we've said, has been following a system of gods that is primarily based on the Canaanite, or, in that time, the Palestinian area of gods. Now, we're not talking Zeus, we're not talking the Roman gods, Mars and stuff like that. This was another system. This was also very different than the system of gods that the Egyptians followed, all right? This was a Canaanite system, and they had a god by the name of Baal. He was their main deity. He was their chief god, and there was a reason why. And this god had the power of rain. He had the power over the rain, and as a result, if you bring rains, that actually increases the crops. Crops can't grow without rain, and so he became very popular. If you appease this god of the rain, Baal, then as a result, things would be fertile and things would grow. Did you guys notice what God did here, though? There shall be neither dew nor rain these years except by my word. Literally, God said, I don't care what Baal can and cannot do. If he wants it to rain, it's not going to. God is like, I have no limits. Let's see what Baal can do. Well, Baal failed mightily. And what was interesting about the system is during this time, Israel was trapped and captured by this religious system. It wasn't like they were struggling with serving Baal. It wasn't like they were struggling to offer idols. They were in full-fledged support. King Ahab was one of the most wicked kings of the time compared to God, as God has said. So what this means, if God says this is one of the most wicked kings, that means Ahab was doing everything completely opposite of what God wanted, and was doing everything that Baal demanded and desired. So why would Baal punish his people for following him? See, by God doing this, it placed a huge statement over the religious system of that day. You guys follow him, and he can't deliver. You keep trying to reach out and praise this other God. Why can't he make it rain? He has limits. And God's like, I don't have limits. And not only that, did you see what else he did? Have you guys ever noticed if you ever put a piece of bacon in front of a dog, okay, unless you have trained this dog for many, 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 many years, and he has no sense of smell, sight, and he can't chew because his teeth are gone, what is that dog going to do to that piece of bacon? He's going to eat it, right? Have you guys ever seen a raven fly around and share its food with anything? Come on. Exactly. I was walking, Vera and I were walking into the store yesterday, near Fred Meyer, and we watched two seagulls fighting over a banana. We're talking midair combat. And out of nowhere, the banana goes bloop. Vera and I are like, avoid the bird poo-poo and keep on going. Birds don't share their food. The only time you can ever get birds to share their food is if there's a little bird. Right? Cheep, 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 cheep. Fine, here, take it. They don't go around sharing with humans, especially during a drought. Think the birds had a lot of food to pick up, No, and here God is like, hey, Elijah, not only is it not going to rain, I want you to go by this river, and I'm going to send birds. They're going to feed you. Okay. What? Roadkill, yeah. Pick up this scrap of possum. Here, have some. So he says he went and lived by the brook Cherith that is east of the Jordan. And the ravens brought him bread. What? And meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening. Forget cooking, people. He just sat there on that rock. Here comes the birds. That is cool. It's like Uber. Just birds. Uber Eats. Yeah, that's right. It says, and after a while, because the drought was so bad, the brook dried up because there was no rain in the land. But what we see here is God is not limited by the laws and the forces of nature. He literally can do what he wants to do whenever he wants to do it. The second thing we see here is in verse 8 through 16. It says, then the word of the Lord came to him, arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow there to feed you. So he arose and went to Zarephath. And when he came to the gate of the city, behold, a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and said, bring me a little water in a vessel that I may drink it. And as she was going to bring it, he called to her and said, oh yeah, and bring me a morsel of bread in your hand. And she said, as the Lord your God lives, I have nothing baked, only a handful of powder in a jar and a little oil in a jug. And now I'm gathering a couple sticks that I may go in and prepare it for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die. And Elijah said to her, do not fear. Go and do as you have said, but first make me a little cake of it and bring it to me. And afterward, make something for yourself and your son. For thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, the jar of flour shall not be spent, and the jug of oil shall not be empty until the day that the Lord sends rain upon the earth. And she went and did as Elijah said, and he and her household ate for many days. The jar of flour was not spent, neither did the jug of oil become empty, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by Elijah. Now, on this point, we have something pretty significant, is God is not limited by distance. Now, until recently, okay, and I put this all in a, quote parentheses, okay, because it can break down, but until recently, we couldn't do much if we weren't somehow physically in that location. So, let me show you guys pretty much the limit of our power. Let's see if this works. I don't know if this is going to work. Come on. See, my power is not that great. Oh, there it goes. Fran, show your phone. I did that. Yeah. I just had a hunch you wouldn't have your phone off. Pretty impressive, wasn't it? I made an object beep. How far are we? 10, 20 feet away? You guys can brag to your friends on Facebook about how I can make things beep. See, this is part of the limits of boundaries. Unless I am there at a location, I really don't have any power over it. I mean, think about how you connect and have related to your kids. If you're sitting in your recliner and you've just relaxed, your kids have a good idea. The odds of you getting up to discipline them are a little less likely than they were when you were standing up. So the only reason that they fear your voice is because, well, in the past you have stood up and you have physically gone over there and said, hey, you can't do this anymore. Stop it, whatever. Okay? Because we have to be physically there to do something. Does it make sense? The only reason that, the United States can exert its influence around the world is because we physically have a presence that can get there through our aircraft carriers and our military bases. There's always some level of a physical presence that must be maintained in order to exert your influence over something. Making sense so far? That is a real limit. This is why Great Britain all throughout the years has been able to influence because of the power of its navy. It's able to throw its influence out around the world. Now here during this time, there was in the Canaanite system, and actually during most of these idolatrous systems back in this time, there was this sort of unspoken rule that the God's power stopped at the national boundary. That's where your power stopped. So it was like a mime. The God could go up and push, but it couldn't quite go through its boundary. As soon as it crossed over, it's done. So for example, if America had a God, okay? And it was trying to go, as soon as it stepped over the border into Mexico, lose all of its power. And that is oftentimes why nations would spend all this time trying to push and expand its boundaries. Because what it showed was, is as the nation expanded its boundaries into other areas, it showed the strength and the power of its God. That was a big deal. So it would keep pushing and keep expanding and keep spreading. And this was really significant. For example, there was a time in when Nebuchadnezzar, when he was the Babylonian king, would go out and take over places. He would take the nation, whatever city, whatever nation that he conquered, he would take their religious icons, their idols, whatever it is, and they would take it, and he would bring it back into and place them inside his temple. You know what that was a statement of? My God is bigger than your God, and beat up your God. That's what they did. Because he realized as Nebuchadnezzar expanded his boundaries, the power of his God grew. And if ever he crossed over, so if we ever decided to take over Canada, that means our God is much bigger than the Canadian God. But the Canadians are so nice, the God would probably just let us in. That's what happens. There was these boundaries. There's this unspoken thing. Your God doesn't have power over in my land unless your nation had taken over my area. And so now with this in our mind, look what happens. It says, then the word of the Lord came to him. Arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon. This is not in Israel. This is not where God's power should have stopped. Because think about it, if they think little God's here, all right, little God, see, God, the God of Israel doesn't have any power past the national boundary of Israel. And God is like, Elijah, leave Israel. What's going to happen to God's power there? I've commanded a widow there to feed you. So he rose and went to Zarephath, and when he came to the gate of the city, behold, a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called her and said, bring me a little water in her vessel. Now remember, we're cramming the story together. We don't exactly know how this widow was commanded. Was it just in God's will and plan that, hey, I have guided and set this woman at this perfect time in her life? This is the perfect situation to just be happening to walk by as you're sitting there on the bench and say, hey, feed me. That's pretty much what Elijah said. Has this ever worked for you out in society? Hey, feed me. No. God said it. I'm calling the police. That's how that conversation would work. But here's Elijah sitting outside, and a lady comes by, picking up sticks, and he says, hey, I need a little water. Hey, and while you're getting the water, bring me some bread. This poor widow is like, well, I don't have a lot. The drought has been so bad and so terrible. I'm getting some sticks. We're going to cook one last thing of bread, and I have no other money or ability to get any food in. My son and I are going to die. Well, come on and join us. She's at that point. You just get the sense that it's just like, now what? Nothing else to do. But Elijah doesn't say, trust me, just trust me. Elijah makes a very specific promise here. He says, as the Lord your God lives, oh no, not that part. Elijah said to her, do not fear. Go and do as you have said. But first bring me a little cake and bring it to me. And afterwards make something for yourself. It's a big claim. Feed me before you feed yourself and your son. That's insane. It says, for thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, the jar of flour shall not be spent, and the jug of oil shall not be empty until the day that the Lord sends rain upon the earth. Elijah, who is outside his national boundary line. Remember, God doesn't have any power out here. He has limits. He can't reach. But he can he? And he goes right in and he says, the jar of flour was not spent, neither the jug of oil became empty, according to the word of the Lord that he spoke by Elijah. God is not limited by distance. It doesn't matter where something happens, where it is, not even when it is really. He is not limited like, oh no, I can't reach you there. Oh no, I can't impact. Oh no, oh man. This nation, they're so wicked, they're so bad. I can't go there. Oh man, this my poor child is a missionary in another place. Oh, shucks, I can't reach him. No, God is not limited by distance. He is performing an incredible miracle on a regular basis in another country. He is not like the wimpy gods of the day. He has no limits. This last one here, so I sometimes wish that I had this ability, you know what I mean? Because my girls keep eating all of my cereal. And it would be nice not to run out of stuff. Could you imagine going to your flour and it won't run out? I bet the son had fun with that. You know he did. Mom comes in, kitchen is covered in flour. Look, Mom, it doesn't run out. Ah! You know what happened. You know it. If there's a boy in the house, you know it. You know he tried it, okay? Oh, you totally know he did. And I think it's really, really fun that Elijah, a man of God, was able to come and, I think, invest and give and help out family in need here. You know as a result of this and using this home as a base of operations, as a place of feed, they would draw closer together. And Elijah probably got pretty attached to this young man. Because look what happens here in verse 17. We see the next limit. It says, after this, the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, became ill. And the illness was so severe that there was no breath left in him. And she said to Elijah, what have you against me, O man of God? You have come to me to bring my sin to remembrance and to cause the death of my son. And he said to her, give me your son. And he took him from her arms and carried him up into the upper chamber where he lodged and laid him on his bed and cried to the Lord, O Lord, my God, have you brought calamity even upon the widow with whom I have sojourned by killing her son? Then he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried to the Lord, O Lord, my God, let this child's life come into him again. And the Lord listened to the voice of Elijah, and the life of the child came into him again. And he revived, and Elijah took the child and brought him down from the upper chamber into the house and delivered him to his mother. And Elijah said, see, your son lives. And the woman said to Elijah, now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is truth. Now, has Elijah invented a new medical technique? Why is this in here? Such a weird story, right? Well, let's just be honest. That seems a little weird. Pastor, you sure you're preaching the right Bible? Yep, pretty sure. But the lady, right? I think we can really connect with the lady here. Because God has already been working a daily miracle in her life and in her son, and then out of nowhere, her son dies. Why, God? And Elijah, why? Why did this happen? And I think her statements really draw attention why she was pointing her anger out at Elijah. Not that Elijah had killed the boy. But see, what happens is the thought was, if you have a man of God in your house, that means that God's eyes and focus and gaze is stronger where the man of God is because he's using Elijah to do his work and do his word. So it's focused there. And this poor lady is like, see what she says here in verse 18? You have come to me to bring my sin to remembrance and to cause the death of my sin, to cause the death of my son. What she was afraid of is she knew she was a sinner. She knew she messed up. And she's like, Elijah, you're here. And it's like God's always looking at the house. He totally sees me when I'm sinning. All the time. Elijah, move to the house next door so God stops looking at my house. Stop looking here. Because as a result of you looking, God is punishing me for my sin. She is broken here. Like, God, why would you let this happen after you saved my son and my life with the flour and the bread and this unlimited supply of food just to kill him later? Sort of messed up, God. And she was grieving, and she was struggling, and she was hurt. And I think we see that in Elijah too. I mean, this would be like Wesley or Lathan. I've known these kids for a while. Like 5.5 years. It would break my heart. I don't even have to be related to them. And see who Elijah is? I don't know if they played ball. I don't know what they did back then. But you totally know he connected with that boy. And here he is, and the mom is just grieving and broken and is just sad. And Elijah, he cried to the Lord, "Oh Lord, my God." In verse 20, have you brought calamity even upon the widow with whom I sojourned by killing her son? Even Elijah is struggling with this. And he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried to the Lord. And I was trying to picture this. And I think sometimes you picture he's like on top of him, which I think is just weird. I don't think that was going on. I mean, I really think what happened is Elijah took the boy, went up to his bed, and laid the boy down. And like you do, you grieve and you get on and you outstretch, and he's pouring out to God. And he's pouring and he's begging, God, do something. This isn't right, Lord. Please bring life back into this boy. And see, and God is like, I'm not limited by distance. I'm not limited by the forces of nature. And I'm not limited by death. See, there was a God during that time by the name of Mott. He was like Baal's worst enemy. And he had power over death. And at one time, I think Mott ate Baal or he ate El. I don't know. I was reading this. I'm like, this sounds hilarious. You look up Canaanite gods in Wikipedia, and oh man, it's fun. So somehow, Mott was over death. You don't really see dead things come to life. Like zombie movies, they're not true. They're not. When that boy died, that was it. That is the man's ultimate limit. And God's like, it's not mine. And the Lord listened to the voice of Elijah. And the life of the child came into him again, and he revived. Could you imagine being the mom downstairs? You're grieving and you're sad and your heart is broken. And Elijah, who you're pissed off at, took your boy upstairs doing his thing, whatever, just broken. And here comes Elijah back down with the boy. Just imagine what would go through your heart and your mind. And then she responds in verse 24. And this is a really weird way to end this account. It says, the woman said to him, now I know that you are a man of God and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is truth. Did you just ignore Elijah this whole other time? I don't think so, okay? I don't think so. I mean, it's possible that happened, but that seemed a little weird to me since you have a daily reminder that the flour can't go anywhere. All right? That there's something in it. And So trying to wrestle through this, I think the emphasis of this verse here, see, Elijah, or in 1 Kings chapter 17, is the first time we see Elijah come on the scene. People don't really know him yet. I mean, all he's done is he's gone up to Ahab and says, there's going to be a drought, and then he leaves. Okay? Those don't have a thing. And so this woman, I think, has seen this and watched it, and she's wrestled through, and she knows the power of God and what God has done. But I think at times, and at this point here, she's probably doubting it a little bit. Like maybe it's just a fluke, and you're actually not a man of God, and maybe God's just doing this to spite you. Maybe you're not really who we think you are. And now, after watching this, after watching Elijah broke and him begging and pleading to God to change his mind, this lady is like, you are legit. An extraordinary God used an ordinary man to bring my child back to life. Now, as the Canaanites did, I think we, even today, create gods with limits. See, there's the money god that we think will bring us happiness. We hoard, we stockpile, we spend on our wants and desires. We can maybe not hand it over to the Lord sometimes, or sometimes we placate and sacrifice and offer the God of money for like, hey, if I just budget really well, then I'll make the God of money happy. And I'll make everything good in my life. But there's lots of people who budgeted in their life who still end up getting destroyed. And so we seek and we focus on that God. Or at times we can go outside of our marriage or outside of other biblical friendships, and we seek satisfaction with other gods. And we serve them instead of serving one another. And we serve them instead of asking the Lord what he wants for us. And other times we can offer praise to the God of sports and seek to get our satisfaction from our teams and sports knowledge. And we just go on and on and on. We limit what God can do in our life when we create idols. We can limit what God does is when we serve other gods. See, in these examples, we move our heart to resting in what a limitless, extraordinary God can do and place it onto these man-made gods. But just like humans, these man-made gods have limits. They can't ultimately bring us satisfaction. They can't ultimately meet our needs. They can't save us. See, because money will run out. New relationships fail. Our sports teams lose. Shut it. My team lost to Paxton's team yesterday, okay? But the satisfaction of our God is endless. There is no limit. God satisfied Elijah when he trusted the Lord for his physical health. He fed him with bread and meat with birds. God satisfied the woman when she responded in obedience to the Lord and made this random dude bread. She had enough food to last through the drought. And God satisfied this family by bringing this young boy back to life when Elijah turned him over. Gave him to the Lord. See, our God is extraordinary because he has no limits. And unlike the gods of the day, whether they're back then or now, our extraordinary God can satisfy.